Welcome to this deep dive. We've got some really thought-provoking ideas to explore today, specifically for you, the learner, stuff that really digs into who we are when, the usual context is stripped away.
Yeah, it's fascinating territory.
Our aim is really just to unpack some of this, maybe using a bit of Gestalt thinking, some philosophy, see if we can spark some insights without it feeling too heavy.
Absolutely. I mean, think about that image that comes up, waking up in a completely white, empty room.
Right.
What does that actually do to your sense of self? When all the familiar stuff is gone, what's left?
It really makes you stop and think, doesn't it? It's like our identities are built in these layers, almost like those Russian dolls.
Yeah.
The parent role, the professional, the friend. They're like the outer shells.
Yeah.
But what happens when you start peeling those back? Is there like a solid core in there, or?
Well, that's the question. And what's so interesting is how much our view of ourselves is tied up in those very contexts, those roles.
You mean they're not just superficial?
Not at all. They actively shape how we see ourselves, how we interact with everything. They become part of our perception.
Okay. And we're going to look at how these roles, when we play them over and over, can almost become like masks that get stuck.
Kind of, yeah. Like an actor who's been in a role for so long, they start to lose track of where the role ends and they begin. There's that idea of life as theater.
Right, the performance aspect.
But if we bring in the Gestalt perspective, it shifts the focus a bit. It's not just the performance, but how doing these performances repeatedly can actually start to fragment our sense of being a whole person.
Fragment. How so?
Like different parts of you aren't quite talking to each other, not integrated.
Ah, okay. That makes sense. There was that metaphor used too, the chameleon.
Right, the chameleon adapting.
How similar is that to how we adapt in different situations?
Yeah.
And where's the difference?
Well, the similarity is obviously the adaptation part. We adjust, just like the chameleon changes color, right? To fit in, to navigate different social scenes. But the key difference, I think, is that the chameleon's change is fluid. For us, sometimes these roles can become really rigid. We get stuck showing only one color, you could say, even when the situation changes.
Stuck in a role. Yeah, I can see that. And this relates to the figure ground idea you mentioned.
Exactly. Think about looking at a picture. You focus on one thing, the figure.
And the rest fades into the background, the ground.
Precisely. In life, a particular role, say being a manager or a parent, can become the dominant figure in our awareness.
And other parts of ourselves.
They can fade into the background. Our, maybe more authentic feelings or other aspects of who we are, they get pushed aside perceptually.
Because our attention is focused on the figure, the role.
Right, and attention is finite, isn't it? What we pull into the foreground automatically pushes other things back. It's a constant dynamic.
So, exploring this further, it suggests that maybe searching for one single true self might just be, well, another layer.
Yeah.
Another role, in a way.
It could be, yeah. That's a really interesting thought, like the waitress example.
Ah, yes, the forced smile.
Exactly. The smile she puts on for work, the role, it can sort of linger even when she's clocked off.
Which brings up that whole concept of emotional labor.
And the tension that creates inside. Because the smile is the figure, but the actual feeling might be something else entirely, lingering in the ground.
That example really hits home. It shows that this idea of authenticity, it's tricky.
It's definitely a paradox. Sometimes trying too hard to shed a false self just leads you into another kind of fixed pattern. It's fascinating how these behaviors can get so ingrained they run on autopilot.
So it's not about finding a fixed point called authentic.
Probably not. It seems more like an ongoing negotiation. In Gestalt terms, it's about having clarity and flexibility in that figure-ground relationship.
So you don't get stuck seeing yourself as only the figure, only the role.
Exactly. Avoiding that over-identification. I remember that study about the flight attendants and the fake smiles.
Vaguely, yes.
Yeah.
What was the point again?
It showed that suppressing parts of yourself, like genuine feelings, doesn't make them vanish.
Right, it just bottles them up.
Or even amplifies the dissatisfaction lurking underneath. It becomes part of that unattended ground. What's ignored doesn't go away. It just influences things from the background. Creates a kind of static.
Okay, so going back to the Russian dolls, maybe the idea isn't that there's one tiny solid doll at the center.
Perhaps not. Maybe the core isn't a fixed thing at all, but more like potential, infinite potential.
And each role, each doll, is just one expression of that potential, part of a bigger picture.
Exactly, a piece of the mosaic. The challenge isn't throwing pieces away, but seeing how they all fit together, how they contribute to the whole picture.
Because thinking there's one essential self might actually be kind of limiting.
It can be, yes. The Gestalt idea emphasizes wholeness as a dynamic process, about bringing these different facets together, not finding one single thing.
Let's talk more about that ground beneath the figures, how perception shapes us.
Right, the figure ground concept again, it's fundamental to how we organize our experience.
The painting analogy was helpful there. What we focus on changes the whole picture.
It really does. Our attention actively structures our reality. What we pick out as a figure in our life shapes the entire landscape of our awareness. Other things, equally real, just recede.
And sometimes these roles become social armor? Is that the idea?
Yeah, that came up. Roles can harden into these protective shells. Maybe because of, past hurts, unmet needs, unresolved stuff.
So the armor protects, but it also restricts.
Precisely. It creates an imbalance, hinders the natural flow of awareness, of connection. It might have served a purpose once, but then it limits us.
Like that broken mirror idea suggesting we feel fragmented.
Yeah.
Especially now, with everything so hyper-connected.
That feeling of fragmentation is common, but there's also that deep, innate human drive towards wholeness, towards integration. That's a core Gestalt principle. We naturally seek coherence.
And this connects to isomorphism. That was a fascinating concept. The idea that our inner world and outer world patterns mirror each other.
Yes, isomorphism suggests this resonance. The patterns we see playing out externally, maybe in relationships or work situations, can often reflect our own internal dynamics.
So noticing recurring themes in life.
Can give you real clues about your own psychological processes, like the outside is mirroring something inside.
Which means paying attention is crucial.
Absolutely. Attention becomes the gateway. It allows us to bring those hidden patterns, those areas of tension or incompletion, into conscious focus, to achieve a kind of closure.
Okay. But then there's the paradox of seeking wholeness itself.
Right.
Maybe it's not about getting rid of all the contradictions. Maybe it's about embracing the complexity.
I think that's much closer to the Gestalt view. Wholeness isn't perfection, not a state free of conflict. It's more about acknowledging and integrating all the different parts, even the messy, contradictory ones.
Finding a balance, letting things ebb and flow.
Exactly. A dynamic equilibrium, a constant process of adjusting and integrating.
Towards the end, things got even more philosophical. The paradox of presence, the infinite field.
Yeah, pushing the boundaries.
Suggesting that maybe the whole search for a true self is, well, maybe a necessary illusion, something that keeps us moving.
It's a profound thought. And the idea of the creative vacuum, too.
The space that opens up when the old structures dissolve.
Exactly. It can feel terrifying, disorienting, to let go of those fixed ideas of who we are.
But it's also where reinvention happens.
That's the idea. It opens up a space for genuine novelty, for growth, for unexpected discovery.
And that question, who watches the watcher? That really throws a wrench in the idea of a fixed self, doesn't it?
It certainly does. It points to the self-referential loop of consciousness. How can you pin down an objective self when the act of observing is part of the process? It suggests something much more fluid, becoming.
Which ties into the illusion of arrival. Like, maybe there's no final destination in this self-discovery thing.
Like the river metaphor, it just keeps flowing, adapting to whatever's in its path.
So authenticity isn't a place you get to and stay.
No, it seems much more like an ongoing process, a process of contact. That's a key Gestalt term, contact, between our various roles, our feelings, the environment.
The self isn't a noun, but a verb. The act of engaging with life.
That captures it beautifully. It's the engaging, the interacting, the becoming.
It can feel a bit destabilizing, that idea. No solid ground.
It can, initially, but there's also immense freedom in it, don't you think? Less pressure to be one fixed thing.
True. And the final metaphors. The unfinished symphony, the infinite spiral staircase.
Lovely images, suggesting it's a continuous journey, an ascent, maybe, without a final summit.
But one that keeps offering wider views, expanding perspectives.
Exactly, and perhaps finding a kind of peace in the exploration itself, not just in reaching an endpoint.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, what really stands out, and for you, the learner listening in, what resonates most? What new questions pop up about your own layers, your own figures and grounds?
For me, it really is that ongoing nature, the infinite spiral staircase, that idea that there's always more to see, more to integrate. It takes the pressure off finding the answer and puts the value on the process itself.
Yeah, it definitely feels like just scratching the surface of a really vast and fascinating internal landscape to explore, lots to ponder.